What is going on, fight fans? So this is something I've been dying to talk about. I did want to get a lot of my video breakdowns, and especially that blocking video. If you haven't seen it, y'all should see it. It's going to blow your mind and change how you look at combat boxing games and defense forever. Trust me, it's amazing to see how deep we could actually take it with this game. But that's besides the point. I got those things out of the way, but since that video came out, I wanted to talk about this topic. We're gonna dive right into it. This is Edward, and you're watching Boxing Fanatico. All right, guys, so this is an important topic because from where the company stands right now, this is a question that a lot of people should be asking themselves. Why do you need to do early access? And if that question goes into your head, then the next logical extension to that question is, are they even going to do early access anymore? Now, the number one reason, you know what? I'm not even going to explain what the number one reason is. I'm going to read right off of Wikipedia in terms of the definition for early access in gaming so that we could all be on the same page and there's little room to kind of wiggle away from that. Early access, and I'll go ahead and post it up here so you can read it along. Early access, also known as early funding, alpha access, alpha funding, or paid alpha. All of this has to do with money. Early funding, alpha access, well, not that one, but alpha funding does, and paid alpha. So of the four related terms to early access, early funding, alpha funding, and paid alpha all really touch on money, funding the game. Is a funding model in the video game industry by which consumers can purchase and play a game in the various pre-release development cycles, such as pre-alpha, alpha, and or beta, while the developer is able to use those funds to continue further development on the game. Those that pay to participate typically help to debug the game, provide feedback and suggestions, and may have access to special materials in the game. The early access approach is a common way to obtain funding for indie games and may also be used along with other funding mechanisms, including crowdfunding. Many crowdfunding projects promise to offer access to alpha and or beta versions of the game as development progresses. However, unlike some of these projects which solicit funds but do not yet have a playable game, all early access games offer an immediately playable version of the unfinished game to players. So yes, debugging is part of the process, but early access is not made for debugging. You can use it for that, but its primary reason is for funding. And usually indie companies use this for funding. Now, I'm going to play back what Ash Habib said in the trailer, and we're going to dissect what's most likely going to happen moving forward. Let's go ahead and play that clip with Ash Habib.
So I'd like to talk to you about our development journey and launch plans. We recently had some very exciting news regarding additional investment. This means additional resources to focus on areas we didn't think possible until after early access. Now, we did have plans to launch early access this summer. Because of the massive expansion of the game, the roster, the expectations, we have to make sure we do justice to the names, whether it's Muhammad Ali, Canelo Alvarez, or the upcoming reveal. We can't rush something that we know everybody is excited about, including us with our own high expectations. So what this means is the early access window for this summer won't happen. Now, I realise some of you will be disappointed by that. We also realise it's been 10 years since the last licensed boxing game, which has been frustrating for those of us who love boxing. That's the primary reason this studio was created. What we cannot do, and what we won't do, is rush for short-term success. That's not the kind of studio we are. We want to do this right. This is why we're not going to announce a launch window. The next announcement on this topic will be a specific release date. I'm hoping you can see the progress we've made in this gameplay video and the passion for what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, so it's not worded like early access is definitely not happening. He said the window for early access will not happen this summer. And he also said that a specific release date will be given to us the next time this topic is covered in terms of release windows, release time. So whenever they're going to talk about the release time frame, it's going to be a specific release date. None of that indicates guaranteed early access isn't happening. It could easily mean that early access itself is being pushed. But think about it from a company's perspective. He also mentioned that they have a large investment that had just came in. But this shouldn't deflect from the fact that they've also had large investments coming in, multiple investments since last year when they started to grow. So their success is good because we're going to probably get the best game imaginable, or what they truly envisioned, instead of giving us something that was decent and then they were going to work on it and hopefully the funding was going to help. They don't need early access to fund this game. And when companies don't need early access, they seldom ever use it. Because what happens is you put out a buggy mess to the world that, you know, people can rip apart, and it's not really a polished full product. Basically, you're not putting your best foot forward for that first impression, that initial wow factor when someone gets the game in their hands. Also, not to mention the fact that when you release it for early access, it is automatically at a discounted price because of the fact that it isn't a complete game. But that discounted price carries over to the full release. So there's a lot of money that is being left on the table if they release early access, with all the people that are going to buy it early and play it for a reduced cost and not have to pay full price for the full game. Now, the only possible thing in my mind, because money is completely off the table. They do not need our money at all. It just doesn't make sense. And this seems like a team that is going for near perfection with this game. They're not ever satisfied with how the game is. Even though the game looks beautiful, they always feel that they need to sharpen it up more, work on it a little bit more to get it ready for full release. They don't need our money. That's for sure. With all the acquisitions that they're getting, with how their thing is being funded and investments are coming all over the place, they're growing. You know, they call themselves an indie company, but they're almost an indie company by, you know, self-proclamation at this point, because they're getting into the 30s in terms of employees, and they have a lot of money behind them to push an incredible AAA product. The only thing could be debugging or trying to, kill bugs and stuff like that and fix that. And companies like Fortnite, for example, or PUBG, that did do this business model and went into early access. PUBG was in early access for like 2 years. They needed the funding. Plus, they have almost a massive online kind of multiplayer experience where they need to stress test those servers aggressively. Boxing is incredibly unique because it's just two people fighting each other. Everything else is AI, except those two people fighting each other when you're online. They don't need to stress test servers like crazy. They can do server testing within themselves. They can do server testing within, somebody at the office versus somebody at home, just a few family members that play from online from one location to the other location. They can have people do it from the United States, but they don't need hundreds of thousands of people stress testing it to see if the online server system works, because you only need to work with two people in the entire game format. It is 100 times easier than having to deal with hundreds of people playing all at the same time. They don't need the money. The debugging is not necessary because with the money, they can stress test it as much as needed internally via hiring some people for stress testing. They can get the servers that they need because of the funding. They don't need early access at all. And if you release on early access, it's a lower price cost for the consumer, and you're basically taking the consumer's money when you don't have to take their money. You don't need their money when it's being funded by big investors. So in my opinion, although Ash did not explicitly say that early access isn't happening, I can't see the rationale, the reasoning for early access to even happen. Now, to some of you, this doesn't even matter because early access only would have been for the PC. So a lot of people were not PC players anyways, so they don't even really care. It's like no sweat off their backs. And it might even be a little bit better because that launch window or that the release date becomes more pressure to release, since there isn't an early access that's floating out there for people to at least enjoy and get something out of. That doesn't exist. No one will be able to actually play the game, so there won't be anything out there for this game in terms of it being playable until the full release date. So it kind of puts more pressure on getting that full release date to us as soon as they can. Now, when will they release the game? Well, Ryan Rose was interviewed by Fred Talks Boxing on his channel not too long ago, and he stated that from his understanding, the December release date seems to be the date that everybody is looking at. And that could probably be that release date for the full game release. So if they were planning to release during that time, they canceled early access and they're still sticking to that December release. If that's the case, then we're probably maybe gonna get the game full release, no early access in December. Now, because they did speak about it releasing on PC in 2021 and then later for consoles, it's possible that PC can get a head start, like maybe 2-week head start or a month head start, who knows? Maybe to do like an initial kind of like soft release and then a full release for consoles the following 2 weeks, the following month or within 2 weeks. That is possible. It would still fall in line on their E3 reveal when they mentioned that on a big stage. But that's my 2 cents about early access. I personally do not think that early access will happen. I do believe that they have foregone early access simply because, one, they want perfection, and you can see they're very cagey sometimes with just giving us more visuals and even thumbnails and videos of the game itself. So that you could tell that they want to see their vision through. And they don't want to take our money for funding when they don't have to take our money for funding. That's an important thing. And then it's just 2 people fighting, so it isn't a massive multiplayer online experience. So they can stress test those servers with the funding that they have without having to include the general public. So with all of that understanding and how early access is really truly just a mechanism for funding, I'm gonna have to go out on a limb and say I no longer believe that early access will happen. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but with all of the breadcrumbs that we're seeing, I just can't see it being a thing. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think early access isn't happening anymore? And if it is, or well, actually, if it isn't, is that upsetting to you? Did you want it for PC? Did you have a PC, or did you just want people like, I don't know, Boxing Fanatico to be playing the game while you wait for the full release? Or are you just happy that now the pressure's on releasing for full release so that everyone can get their hands on it? Well, everyone who has a console can get their hands on it when the game comes out. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Until next time, guys, this is Edward, and I'm out.